Can a Ukrainian pilot change the course of the war? Is it justified to strike Russia on its own soil? Today we will break down, second by second, the attack of the Ukrainian fighter bomber that battered a Russian base once considered untouchable. Get ready to see the Ukrainian jet fly at treetop level, unleash its electronic warfare to shut down Russian radars, and detonate in just 1 second the hangar crammed with guided munitions. But this isn't just a battle report, it's a real-time moral question. Subscribe right now if you believe Ukraine was right to bomb Russia, and leave your comment, because your opinion could ignite this debate as much as the bombs ignited the runway. Stay until the end. We will reveal never-before-seen footage, Moscow's furious response, and the surprise weapon Kyiv may already be preparing for the next round. This is just beginning. Let's get started. At dawn on August 24th, an aviator of the Ukrainian Air Force took the seat of a MiG-29 built during the final decade of the Soviet Union. The airframe, designed for short supersonic dogfights of the Cold War, had later received a series of emergency modifications that, unexpectedly, turned it into a platform for precision-guided weaponry. His mission that morning was as direct as it was unusual: to launch a selective strike against the local headquarters of the Federal Security Service of the Russian Federation FSB in Glotovo within the Belgorod region, just a few kilometers from the border. Shortly before 5:45, the aircraft finished taxiing on the dispersal platform. Under each wing hung a 250-kilogram AASM HAMMER kit, equipped with inertial navigation and military GPS correction, a system developed in France and originally designed for Rafale and Mirage 2000 fighters, not for a Soviet jet from the 1980s. That incompatibility forced Ukrainian technicians to devise unorthodox solutions: launcher racks fabricated in improvised Kyiv workshops, GPS antennas strapped to original fairings, and in the cockpit itself, a civilian tablet that translated guidance data packets into the language of the MiG's old digital buses. The target wasn't a training range or an ammunition depot. The FSB, heir to the KGB, operated the facility inside a compound ringed with physical security, electronic protection layers, and the assumption that no one would dare attack it. That assumption was about to be shattered. The flight path was designed to skim along the vegetation to exploit Earth's curvature against Russian early warning radars. Maintaining 50 meters of altitude at over 900 kilometers per hour left virtually no margin for error. Power lines, towers, and rural structures demanded precision piloting, where any slip of throttle or rudder could mean disaster. At 0558, the MiG climbed to the assigned heading. Unlike regular patrol sorties, the tactical weight lay in surprise. The S-400 Triumph air defense system, deployed in multiple battalions across Belgorod, has a nominal capacity to detect small signature targets up to 400 kilometers away. However, its effectiveness drops considerably below 100 meters altitude due to the radar horizon. That gap allowed the pilot to approach unnoticed to a predetermined release point. At 0622, the fighter, which had remained glued to the terrain, pulled into a near-vertical climb. In seconds, it went from 50 meters to 5,000 meters. Such a maneuver exposed the MiG's signal to the 92 N6 gravestone radars of nearby anti-air batteries, which reacted immediately. The onboard radar warning system screamed sharp pulses. The aircraft had been locked, a firing solution was being computed, and unless the release was completed quickly, a 48 N6E2 interceptor would soon be on its way. The weapons panel showed optimal parameters, and the release button was pressed. The bombs dropped with 2 dry jolts. Almost instantly, they ignited their booster rockets, taking a high ballistic profile that extended their range beyond 70 kilometers. Meanwhile, the pilot inverted the trajectory with a modified Immelmann, an aggressive turn that converted potential energy into low-altitude speed, complicating enemy missile solutions. In the underground anti-air command post, Lieutenant Smirnov authorized the launch of 2 48 N6 missiles. They left their tubes at Mach 6, but had to intercept a target now diving back to treetop level, changing heading erratically. At the cruise altitudes those missiles were designed for, the MiG would have been vulnerable. At 60 meters, the hit probability collapsed. The approach vectors didn't converge, and the proximity fuses triggered without a target. The AASM bombs, in contrast, continued their program. Each alternated GPS input with inertial navigation to resist jamming attempts. Their control surfaces corrected trajectory dozens of times per second. At 6:27, the first penetrated the FSB building's roof. The delayed fuse allowed the shaped charge to punch through floors before detonating. The second device struck tens of meters farther back, amplifying structural damage and causing a progressive collapse of intermediate levels. The shockwave, with pressure spikes exceeding 1.3 atmospheres inside enclosed spaces, fragmented light walls, and reflected off slabs, multiplying destructive power. Documents, servers, and equipment were either buried or blown out, depending on the damage in each wing. From the outside, the scene resembled an office block reduced to a charred core and twisted columns. For Moscow, the message was clear. An asset once deemed out of Ukrainian reach had been successfully struck, and regional defenses had failed to react in time. The incident tightened protocols at other sensitive facilities. Later reports indicated the redeployment of additional S-400, Pantsir S-2, and Tor M2 units to points of possible interest. Back at the Ukrainian base, confirmation took minutes that felt like hours. The pilot, now returning at extremely low altitude, reported critical fuel levels and severe flight fatigue. Even so, the mission was classified as accomplished. Both the ground crew and intelligence handlers had gathered visual and signals evidence certifying the impact. The MiG-29 used in the operation was inspected upon landing. Add-on components, improvised wiring, makeshift racks, and the consumer tablet proved that integrating Western systems into Soviet platforms, though crude, was viable when will and technical knowledge combined. The exercise reinforced the internal narrative of resilience and innovation against an adversary with material superiority. As for the AASM HAMMER, its modular structure once again showed advantages over glide-only kits. The additional thrust not only extended range, but also gave terminal velocity sufficient to complicate interception. In high-density SAM environments, that translates into higher survival rates for the munitions and, by extension, more efficient use of scarce stocks. The episode also fits into a timeline of selective strikes marking the conflict since 2022. Raids against logistics depots in Crimea, sabotage at airfields in Kursk, and naval drone attacks in Sevastopol. Each action seeks to chip away at Russia's perception of invulnerability and show that even dense defensive belts contain exploitable gaps. From a strategic viewpoint, the strike on the FSB's regional headquarters carries high symbolic weight. It targets domestic intelligence, exposes flaws in command and control, and projects a message of accessibility that could ripple through the morale of mid-level cadres. The direct consequences, loss of equipment, files, or personnel, matter less in the long run than the political impact of proving the border does not guarantee immunity. Western defense analysts highlighted 3 preliminary lessons. First, combining Western precision tech with Soviet-era platforms continues to expand the set of targets Ukraine can hit. Second, Russia's air defense architecture shows temporal limitations against low-profile threats and abrupt maneuvers. Third, the information war gains traction when a tactical action is used to erode the adversary's institutional prestige. The anonymous pilot returned with informal recognition from his superiors, aware that success does not guarantee repeatability without cost. Russia will likely increase dispersion of sensitive assets and reinforce low-altitude radar coverage. At the same time, Ukraine may replicate the method elsewhere, as long as it secures guided kits and compatible platforms. It remains to be seen whether the coming months consolidate this trend of surgical strikes, or instead provoke countermeasures that rebalance the duel between low-signature aerial offense and layered defense. What is certain is that the August 24th event will become a case study in innovation under material disadvantage, and in the potential vulnerability of centers once thought beyond immediate risk. Are we witnessing the definitive leap toward a precision war, turning an old 1980s fighter, upgraded with Western kits, into a surgical projectile against the Russian rear? or the trigger for a massive expansion of SAM defenses, and with it, a cycle of escalation hard to contain. Should Ukraine double down on these deep strikes, even at the risk of pushing the Kremlin to deploy longer-range systems? Or should it moderate the military tempo and open a diplomatic window before reprisals spiral? While Washington decides how many additional JDAM ERs to release, and Moscow weighs moving more Panzer S-2 and continuous wave radars inland, the moral dilemma now falls on you. Is it legitimate to exploit every technological edge, even if it brings the conflict closer to populated areas? Or does responsibility lie in limiting lethality, even at the cost of ceding ground? Write it in the comments, share this analysis, and subscribe so you don't miss the next report. The next mission could once again redefine everything we know about air supremacy in the 21st century.